Something I've always wondered was how a mono ghost type would do in a playthrough of Generation 1. As today it's Halloween, I think it's the perfect time to finally find out. For today's video, I'm going to be beating Pokemon Yellow with only a Misdreavus. And yeah, I'm going to have to explain exactly how I'm going to do this. Obviously, Misdreavus was introduced in Generation 2, so there isn't a legal way to obtain it in Pokemon Yellow. However, I was able to modify the Pokeyellow disassembly and use it to rebuild the ROM, adding Misdreavus to the game. What I did is replace Mew's sprites with some sprites that I made in Photoshop. These sprites are actually based on Misdreavus' later generation sprites. I downscaled the art and then traced it in pixel art, and hopefully I gave Misdreavus some Gen 1 jank. Let me know how you think I did in the comments. After that, I edited Mew's game data so that it has the base stats that Misdreavus would have. I was pretty concerned with how I would deal with the special attack stat and special defense stat when I first got this concept, but then I realized that Misdreavus has the exact same special attack and special defense, so it's really easy to combine these two into just one unified stat. So Misdreavus has 60 HP, 60 attack, 60 defense, and 85 special and 85 speed. That gives it a 16.41% chance to crit in Generation 1. Now it's time for my first battle with this little thing, so here's the back sprite. Yeah, kind of weird. I was going for that, this one little pixel up at the top left, like just hanging out up there. I feel like this is very Generation 1. By the way, this first battle is going to be a free win. Eevee only knows Tackle, and in Generation 1, AI trainers don't have power points, so it can never use Struggle. Plus, Struggle is a normal type move too, so even that wouldn't let Eevee damage Misdreavus. So now we need to talk about Psywave, because this move is, well, it's complete garbage. This has got to be one of the worst moves in the game. It deals damage in one of the most unique ways of any move introduced to date. It deals between 1 damage and 1.5 times the user's level in damage. So at level 6, Misdreavus can deal between 1 damage and 9 damage. Honestly, not very good. But it gets worse, because Psywave only has 80% accuracy, so yeah, might as well be just like 25%, and it also only has 15 PP. By the way, Game Freak realized that this move was trash and upgraded its accuracy to 100%. Guess which generation they did that in? Generation 7. Yes, it took 7 generations for them to make this move just a little bit better. And by the way, then in Generation 8, Psywave can't be selected in battle. So yeah, a fitting end for a terrible move. So now we can ask the question, why does my Misdreavus start with only Growl and Tackle? Well, I had to decide which moves it should learn, and I wanted to be as true to the Pokemon as I could be while only using moves that exist in Generation 1. I'm not modding in any new moves for this playthrough. So while Misdreavus learns Spite, Mean Look, Pain Split, and Perish Song in Generation 2, I'm not going to be using any of them today. To give me an idea of what Generation 1 moves they might have given Misdreavus, I compared its Generation 2 move pool with Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar's Generation 1 move pools. As a starting point, it can learn the same 2 starting moves that it has in Generation 2, so that's where Growl and Psywave come from. By the way, it does actually have Growl in its first move slot, so I preserved that weird quirk. From there, it's easy if it learns moves from the same levels that it does in Generation 2. So that's level 6, 12, 19, 27, 36, and 46. It can learn Confuse Ray and Psybeam at the exact same levels. I figured there weren't enough moves for it to learn something at level 6. Plus, in Generation 1, very few Pokemon learn a new move that early. At level 19, I need a replacement for Mean Look, and I figured Screech was a decent alternative. They both mess with the opponent's defensive potentials in very different ways, I will admit. Plus, Misdreavus gets Screech as an egg move when a Grimer or Muck help produce the egg in Generation 2. Truly a Halloween-themed breeding pair. Okay, so back to the moves. At level 36, I need another replacement, so I decided to give it Nightshade as its only damage-dealing Ghost-type move. I feel like Lick is the Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar's thing in Generation 1, so I didn't want Misdreavus to have it. Also, Ghost moves are just bad in this game because they don't damage Psychic types due to a programming error, and I haven't changed that for this run. Finally, at level 46, I give it Hypnosis. Misdreavus doesn't learn this move in Generation 2 through conventional means, but there was an event Misdreavus from the New York City Pokemon Center that had it. For TMs and HMs, I gave it access to the standard moves that nearly every Pokemon can learn. Toxic Takedown, Double Edge, Mimic, Double Team, although I won't use it, Reflect, Bide, Rest, and Substitute. For elemental moves in Generation 2, it learns Psychic, Thunder, and Zap Cannon, plus it learns Thunderbolt at the Move Tutor in Crystal. So I'll give it Thunderbolt, Thunder, and Thunder Wave in Generation 1. It learns Swift, so I'll give it that as well. Also, Teleport, Metronome, Dream Eater, and Psywave just makes sense. So that rounds out my Misdreavus' move pool. Now, I want to mention one more thing before I get going with the playthrough, and that's that there are other ways to introduce later generation Pokemon back into Generation 1. For example, Gym Leader Matt has a series where he plays Red and Blue with later generation Pokemon, and I think that series is really interesting, so you should check it out. I've linked a couple of the videos in the description. Also, him and I completed a race through Pokemon Yellow and Red with Ghastly, so if you're curious how the Generation 1 games compare when using that ghost type, go and check out the VOD for that stream on both of our channels. So now let's talk about how I've been getting through this early game. Because Psywave is so bad, I failed to knock out this first Bug Catcher's 2 Caterpie, and then I got stuck having to deplete all of Growl's PP. But in the end, this is actually probably a good thing, because then I'm going to be able to use Struggle, which is a 50 base power normal type move. With it, I'm going to be able to defeat all of the other trainers in Viridian Forest. While I'll do that, I'll mention another advantage that Misdreavus has. In Generation 2, a lot of the new Pokemon they introduced had the fast growth rate, and Misdreavus is one of these Pokemon. In a lot of my previous challenges, we've noted that a lot of slow growth rate Pokemon fare pretty poorly. But in Generation 1, there's only 3 evolutionary lines that are fast growth rate Pokemon. The Clefairy line, the Jigglypuff line, and the Chansey line. So I don't have a lot of experience using fast growth rate Pokemon. It's going to be really interesting to see how this affects Misdreavus' playthrough. So using Struggle is pretty slow because I have to use the early game potions to heal Misdreavus after it defeats Pokemon, but since there's so many potions available in the early game, I am able to defeat all the trainers in Viridian Forest, and then I make it to Pewter City. After I heal, I'm finally ready to face Brock. Let's do this. Brock leads with Geodude. Because I have to use Psywave, I'm just hoping for good damage rolls here. The first turn's pretty good, but then I miss on the second turn, and my third turn gives almost no damage. Like, come on. Then I deal a good amount taking Geodude to red, and after that I finish it on the next turn. Alright, my big fear here though is that I'm going to miss too much or deal too little damage too many times against the Onix, and then it's going to be able to knock me out. Luckily, Misdreavus did learn Confuse Ray when it leveled up, so with that, I should be able to make it through. However, it looks like Psywave is on my side because it rolls 2 really big hits right away, and then it gets 2 smaller ones, but that's still enough to defeat the rock-solid Pokemon trainer. Now as I head out onto Route 3, I wasn't aware at the time, but the pain of this run is about to begin. Ooh, a little bit of creepy foreshadowing. Actually, not really, I'm going to explain it right away. Using Struggle throughout Viridian Forest has been, I should say, a luxury, but now that I have Psywave, Growl, and Confuse Ray, it's getting more and more difficult to spam out all my PP to use the move that is supposed to be a last resort. That means that if I get unlucky with Psywave, I could be trapped in the fight spamming out all of Confuse Ray and Growl. While I'm battling the first Bug Catcher after Brock, you can see that I start to realize this problem. If Psywave just misses a few too many times, it's gonna run out of PP. So I'm using Confuse Ray to hopefully get more damage in, because Psywave just is so inconsistent. Like, my videos are all about developing consistency with every Pokemon, and yeah, this move is, it's terrible. I hate this move. Although I do have to say, I'm having a quite novel experience with this run because no other Pokemon start with Psywave, so there is no way to have this experience with Vanilla Yellow. After that battle, I decide that I need another move that can deal damage, and obviously my only choice is Bide. And while it is painful that I have to use this move this early, there is actually a really interesting interaction here. When an opponent deals self-inflicted confusion damage, it actually counts towards Bide's counter. So the combination of Confuse Ray and Bide is actually another way that Misdreavus can deal damage to the opponent's Pokemon. Albeit a very inconsistent way to deal damage to the opponent because I'm banking on the 50% chance from Confusion. The reason I'm banking on Confusion damage is because Misdreavus has a Ghost type, so most of the early game Pokemon can't even hit it. When I first taught Bide, I thought that this combination would be a measure of last resort, but after defeating the youngster, I'm starting to think that I'm gonna require it, because Psywave only has 1 PP left. As a result, I have to head back to town and heal before I can continue with the route. I did decide to face both the Lass and the other bug catcher just to give Misdreavus a little bit more experience. After that, I examined my PP to see if I have enough to continue through the route. I've got 4 Psywave, 5 Bide, and 3 Confuse Ray. This should be enough to defeat the final mandatory bug catcher. After all, he only has 2 Pokemon on his team. But I really should have been more cautious here, especially with moves that are so inconsistent. By the time I'm knocking the Caterpie out, I realized that I also miscalculated my use of Confuse Ray, and now Bide does very little to the Metapod, and so as a result, I'm banking on Psywave. Please just roll 2 good damage ranges. The first one is like okay, but I need better than that. And then the second one misses. Okay, so yeah, let's spam out all of the Growl PP and use Struggle again. At least the Metapod only has Harden, so this is just a time waste. I run out of Growl, use Struggle, and that's it. I've made it to Mount Moon. But I'm unfortunately not free from the trick that Misdreavus is playing on me. Well, I guess that I'm playing on myself, because Misdreavus is not going to learn a new move for a while. The next damage dealing move that it gets is Psybeam at level 27, and that's quite far away. So for now, I'm going to have to continue relying on Psywave, Bide, and Confuse Ray. I do some extra training in Mount Moon, and I'm planning well, so after I grab the rare candy, I pick up the escape rope. I also go down here, and normally I'd grab Mega Punch, but of course Misdreavus can't learn it, like it has no hands. But this location is useful for another purpose. If I defeat the rocket, I can go over to this rock and grab a hidden ether, which allows me to replenish my PP and continue my training. Still, these moves are too inconsistent, so I'm not going to make it through the whole cave, but that's why the escape rope is relevant. I can use it to teleport back to the Pokemon Center outside of the cave, heal up, and then come back in. On the bottom floor of the cave, I defeat the Super Nerd, and then grab my reward, which is the Dome Fossil. The creepiest of the fossils. Then I have to face Jesse and James, and in the previous fight, I really tried to conserve Psywave as much as possible so that I could use it here. I take a victory over them, and finally I've made it to Celadon City. This took way too long. I don't really know if there's a good choice next. Like, Misty's going to be very powerful, but the rival also has 4 Pokemon, and yeah, I'm having PP issues. Still, I decide to face him. After all, the Spearow is the only Pokemon that can actually damage Misdreavus, so I just have to get by it, and then maybe I'll win with Struggle or something again. I start by setting up Confuse Ray, Spearow damages itself, and then my Psywave knocks it out. Next is Sandshrew, and I really hope that I can avoid sand attacks here. I use Confuse Ray, it hits itself, my Psywave does almost no damage, and then it snaps out of confusion, hitting me with Sand Attack. Oh, just great. At least my next Psywave does a lot of damage, but then I have 2 follow-up Psywaves that do very little. I am fairly lucky though to be proceeding with only 1 drop to my accuracy. Now at this point, Misdreavus has also learned Screech, and it combos very well with Confuse Ray and Bide, because I can lower Rattata's defense with it, and then when it hits itself in confusion, it will do even more damage. In fact, it does so much more that the Rattata knocks itself out. Alright, that was good. I can repeat this strategy against the Eevee. After all, using Screech PP is much more desirable than using PP on one of my other moves. However, the Eevee does know Sand Attack, and it starts to set it up, and that makes me miss so much. It actually came to a point that I wasn't sure if I was going to win here. Luckily, I do manage to take it out. I head back to heal, and then I take care of Nugget Bridge at a snail's pace, because believe me, Misdreavus needs to head back to the Pokemon Center more than once. More than twice, actually. Even more than 3 times. It has to head back to heal 4 times in total. This is starting to feel like some awful Pokecenter Groundhog Day horror movie. I have been cursed by Misdreavus to constantly visit Nurse Joy and replenish my PP. It's strange having a Pokemon that needs to heal this frequently when it takes basically no damage. Like, the most powerful move that I could be hit by up until this point has been Peck. Well, I guess Brock's Bide could have also hit me, but Misdreavus is fast enough to negate that. After saving Bill, on my way back to Celadon City, I decide to face Misty next. I don't think that Psybeam is really going to be that impactful against her anyways, so I don't want to level up and waste time. Misty leads with Staryu. I go for Confuse Ray right away and it hits a water gun for 8 damage. My next Psywave does about a quarter, but then my second one does so much, taking the Staryu to red. If only that had just done a little bit more. My next one finishes it off, and now I'm moving on to her ace. Same strategy as before. Set up Confuse Ray, it hits itself, and then I chose to go for Bide. After all, the Starmie is going to do a lot of damage with Bubble Beam, but here's what's really unfortunate. Misdreavus is currently speed tied with Starmie, so on the turn when I need to move first to accumulate damage, I move second, Starmie deals damage for free, and that puts me in a really bad position, which leads to a loss. That's my first reset today. Although it doesn't feel like it, because every time I've had to use Struggle has felt like a reset. I try again, this time I use Bide on Staryu, which I think is a bad choice in retrospect. It does a lot of damage, but I take damage in the process. I take it out, and I have under half health left for the Starmie. Okay, I'm definitely going to need to get lucky here. I go for Confuse Ray, and Starmie hits itself, that's a good turn 1. And then I decided to use Screech to hopefully improve the confusion damage. Unfortunately though, it misses, and after taking a big hit from the water type, I decided I should use Psywave instead. Misty uses an X-Defend, and my Psywave does so much taking it to orange, but Starmie hits, taking Misdreavus to 3 hit points. Okay, please Psywave, don't miss. It doesn't, and that's it. I've earned my second badge. And while that's exciting, what's even more exciting is that I only have a few more battles to go through before Misdreavus is going to get Psybeam. On the SSN, after a close battle against the Sailor, I pick up Rest. Then I defeat the Gentleman, grabbing the rare candy, and after that, I defeat the Rival. Now these fights are starting to feel really easy because I actually have a decent damage dealing move. And things are only going to get better once I defeat Surge, so let's do that now. Surge's only Pokemon is Raichu, and the only move that it can actually damage Misdreavus with is Thunderbolt. It takes a while, but it finally uses it, and it does less than inspiring damage. I even came into this fight without healing, and I'm able to take a first attempt victory. So yeah, Surge is once again very bad. By defeating him, I now have the TM for Thunderbolt, and I teach this to Misdreavus right away. Then I dig back to Cerulean, pick up the bike, reorder my inventory, and magically cut 2 trees through the power of video editing. And now it's time for me to face the Wrapping Lass. Luckily here, Psybeam is super effective against all her poison types, and I'm able to knock them out in 1 hit each. By the way, yes, it is kind of scary to face her, because if the first Oddish did paralyze Misdreavus, the Bellsprouts can waste my time with Wrap, even though they can't do damage, because the Wrap animation still plays, even if it's used on a Ghost-type Pokemon, but it does no damage. Psybeam in combination with Thunderbolt gives Misdreavus answers for all the Pokemon in Rock Tunnel, including the Pokemon on the self-destructing Hikers team. And with that, I've made it to the mid-game. Now, arriving in Celadon City around 37 minutes is not a very good time, so I should do the safe play and explore the hideout to collect items. I pick up the PP Up, a Nugget, the TM for Hornrill, which I can sell, the TM for Double Edge, which might be useful for damage, a hidden Nugget, an HP Up, the TM for Razorwind to sell, and then finally a rare candy. After that, I sell most of these items, and then I pick up some vitamins. Because I can buy 5, which is quite a few, I decided to go with 4 Carbos and 1 Calcium. That's because I am going to pick up at least 3 Carbos throughout the playthrough, and I don't want to hit the vitamin threshold before I get the last one. Next, in Saffron City, I grabbed the TM for Psychic. While it has 5 less base power than Thunderbolt, it's a great alternative, especially when I'm facing ground types, like the Sandshrew, which will later be the infamous Sandslash on the Rivals team. With him out of the way, I defeat the Ghastly quickly because Psychic is super effective here, and then I smash Jesse and James. After that, I explore the Safari Zone, and then I head into Erica's gym. I think it makes sense to do a little bit of training here, especially with Psybeam and Psychic. They're both super effective, and it leads to fast experience. So fast actually that I just don't have to watch any of the animations or do any of the battles. With all of that out of the way, it's now time to face Erica. I figured for this battle that Psychic would be more than enough. Unfortunately though, it's only doing a third to the Tangela, so that's not great. And then Weepinbell survives a hit and puts Misdreavus to sleep. Okay, that's bad. Razorleaf gets a crit, doing so much. Luckily I wake up, and after another crit, Misdreavus is left with red health. Oh no, I'm pretty sure that the Gloom is gonna survive. But in a strange turn of events, it doesn't. Psychic knocks it out in 1 hit, and that wasn't a crit. Alright, I guess I'll take that. Next, it makes sense to head to Koga's gym. Here I have to face the 2 mandatory jugglers, and they're usually quite strong, especially without a physical move. Today, I'm relying on Thunderbolt to knock these Pokemon out. Unfortunately for me, it doesn't always get a 2-hit against the Drowsy, so that's just frustrating, but Misdreavus pulls through and I make it to the Poison-type Master. Now, I'm pretty sure this one's going to be fine because I have Psychic. I get a critical hit on the first Venonat, and that takes it out. But the second Venonat survives, although it does very little with Psybeam because I lowered its special. I knock it out on the next turn, and that leads to the third Venonat. I go for Psychic, and it just barely doesn't knock it out, like come on. And then Venonat puts Misdreavus to sleep. I sleep for way too long, get my special lowered, and that's it. Okay, so I didn't expect that. Let's try that again. This time I sweep through all the Venonats and make it to the Venomoth. But unfortunately, Psychic is doing just under half. Venomoth hits a big Psychic, and that's it. Okay, that's frustrating. I think I should probably do some other training first. So I can head over to Silph next and fight the mandatory trainers here. Yes, I basically consider the Machoke guy on the 10th floor a mandatory trainer, and that'll give Misdreavus a little bit more experience. But still, after the Arbok guy, it's only level 40, so instead of heading back to Koga's gym, let's try and fight the rival. After all, I'm here now. He leads with Sand Slash, my Psychic does half, and then it tries a Slash, obviously which fails, and then I knock it out on the next turn. Cloyster's next, and Thunderbolt finishes it in a single hit, and then Magneton comes out. Okay, let's deal with this thing now. At least in this fight, it hasn't reached its full potential because it doesn't have Thunder Wave, so I'm able to take it out slowly with 3 Psychics. But that isn't a good sign for the final 2 fights. Thunderbolt's my best option for the Kadabra. I luckily get a critical hit here and then knock it out on the next turn. And now it's time for his ace, Flareon. I go for Psychic and it looks like it's doing about a quarter. Flareon retaliates with Fire Spin. Okay, this could be bad. But that move's accuracy isn't very good, so it misses on the next turn. It gets one last Ember in, taking Misdreavus to 12 hit points, but I do manage to take the victory. Defeating him here means I can easily clear the rest of Silph, and that opens the way to Sabrina's gym. I want to fight her next, so I head south of Lavender Town and pick up the TM for Swift. After all, this is going to be very useful against her. The reason is that Abra likes to use Flash to lower your accuracy. Now I wanted to use Psybeam so that its flashes would badge boost Misdreavus' attack, but I cannot believe how many times it missed Flash in a row. It was so frustrating. Then once it started setting up Flash, I still didn't miss, so yeah, I didn't get that many boosts this time. Luckily on the first turn the Kadabra's in battle, it does hit a Kinesis which badge boosts me again, but when I finally knock it out, the experience levels me up, and so I've lost my badge boosts for the Alakazam anyways. This leads to a loss. To prevent the mid-battle level up, I fight the trainers in Sabrina's gym with Slowpoke, and then I also knock out one trainer in the fighting dojo. After that, I'm level 45 over the next damage rounding threshold, and now I think I'm ready for Sabrina again. This time Abra is still not getting very lucky with Flash. I only get 3 badge boosts here, and then on the Kadabra I get an additional one due to Kinesis. And then in a very surprising turn of events, Alakazam's Psywave does a lot of damage. Usually it does 1 damage. Because I didn't get as many badge boosts as I wanted, I'm not able to 2-hit it, and it knocks me out with Psychic. In the next fight, I proceed past the Abra with 1 more badge boost. I finish off the Kadabra, taking minimal damage in the process, and then Alakazam hits the field. My first Swift crits, which does about half, then Alakazam sets up Reflect, so it takes less damage on the next turn, but that isn't enough and I knock it out. Okay, good. That fight was a lot more challenging than I thought it would be. It's nice to be finally by her. And now I can backtrack to Koga's gym. After all, I'm roughly 5 levels higher than I was last time, which is over 2 more damage rounding thresholds. The question is, can I one-hit the Venonats? The answer is yes for the first one, even without a critical hit. Misdreavus levels up to level 46, and I have the chance to learn Hypnosis. I teach it in the place of Psybeam, and I move on to the next Venonat. Will Psychic one-hit? Yes, it will. Okay, it's time for the third Venonat. This one has the highest likelihood of surviving because it's the highest level. However, I get a critical hit, so that's really nice. All that's left is Venomoth. I go for Psychic against it and get a lucky special drop. This is a 33% chance event. Venomoth's Psychic does very little as a result, and I take it out on the next turn. Okay, so I've got myself a speed boost and the ability to surf. So now I can head to Cinnabar Island. I complete Pokemon Mansion, and with some fancy video editing, I'm now ready to face Blaine. He leads with Ninetales, and oops, I guess I forgot to heal. I go for Hypnosis, it misses, which is annoying, but then the second one puts the Fiery Fairy Fox to sleep. Because of that, I'm able to knock it out without taking any damage, and then Rapidash is next. Because its best moves are physical moves, I just go for Psychic and knock it out over 2 turns. Okay, now it's time for Arcanine. I go for Hypnosis because it's good for the YouTube algorithm. And yeah, it misses. And then Arcanine hits a Flamethrower, which gets a critical hit. And that's it for Misdreavus. Okay, genuinely, I think that sleep tactics are sort of deeply ingrained in who I am because I grew up using a Butterfree. After all, Sleep Powder was awesome when I was a kid. I could be like 15 levels under-leveled and still manage to win occasionally if I just put the opponent to sleep. After all, Generation 1 Sleep is pretty broken. With it on my side, I'm able to knock the Arcanine out and proceed to Giovanni's gym. Now, I think it's worth reflecting on the fact that Misdreavus has really been speeding through the mid to late game. Like, the early game had very few resets, but it was such a slog with Struggle, Psywave, Bide, Confuse Ray. Ugh. Ever since I got access to moves like Psybeam, Thunderbolt, and Psychic, this has been much easier. Giovanni leads with Dugtrio. If you examine Misdreavus' speed, it has 136, which is 3 more than the mole's. So I move first and do half with Psychic, and then it hits me with Dig, taking Misdreavus down to 5 hit points. Oh no, that's very bad. At least the following Persian can't do any damage to me because it only has normal type moves. And that might be the advantage that I need. It can use Screech, which can affect Misdreavus, so if I spam Hypnosis and miss a lot, then maybe it will badge boost me and allow me to knock out the Nidos which follow. Here's the cruel irony of that. I didn't look down at my little EXP bar, because as soon as I knock the Persian out, Misdreavus levels up and resets all its badge boosts. Psychic doesn't take the Nidoqueen out, and that's it. Okay, so that was a good waste of time. Once again, to prevent the mid-battle level up, I can fight one trainer in Giovanni's gym, and then come back and try the fight again. This time I use Swift on the Dugtrio just in case it uses Dig. Yes, in Generation 1, Swift will hit Pokemon when they're underground or in the air. I knock it out over 3 turns, and next is Persian. Now against Persian, you can see that I really wanted to badge boost. Like, I just keep going for Hypnosis, but it in fact put the Persian to sleep. So yeah, it ends up putting the Persian to sleep again. And as my Hypnosis PP is running out, I realize that I'm gonna need to attack and then use Hypnosis on the following Pokemon so that I can survive the rest of the fight. Unfortunately, I missed the Nidoqueen, it hits me with Earthquake, and Misdreavus survives. But then the next Hypnosis hits, and I knock it out. Hypnosis once again connects on the Nidoking, I put it to sleep and then get a critical hit with Psychic, knocking it out in 1 turn. Okay, all that's left is his Rhydon. Can I get lucky again? And in this case, I do in 2 ways. Hypnosis puts it to sleep, and then after 1 Psychic, which does about a third, my second one gets another critical hit, and Rhydon goes down. So I've made it past all of the gym leaders in Kanto, and now there are only 6 trainers left in the game. Of them, the first is the rival. He sends in Sandslash first. My Psychic does more than half, it retaliates with Poison Stink, which does 3 damage, okay, and then I knock it out with Psychic on the next turn. Executes next. Now, because this is his second Pokemon and he still has 4 more that follow it, I really need to avoid paralysis here. Because of its typing, I'm not going to be able to one-hit it with any of my moves, so Hypnosis was the best choice here. I knock it out and move on to the following Cloyster. Obviously it has low special, so Thunderbolt takes care of it, and now I move on to the Magneton. And this thing could also paralyze me. Now, I'm about to get very lucky here. Hypnosis hits, and then the following 2 Psychics that I use, yes, both of the Psychics, get critical hits, and I take the Magneton out with 2. Alright, that was really awesome. Kadabra follows, I use Swift, it does more than half, and then the Psychic type sets up Reflect, improving its defenses. But my next Swift also gets a critical hit, so Kadabra goes down. Nice. All that's left is Flareon. And at this point the game was like, you've been too lucky, like I need to punish you. My Psychic only does about a quarter, and Flareon strikes back with Flamethrower, which does absolutely devastating damage, knocking Misdreavus out in a single turn because of a critical hit. Okay, so we don't have to worry about me winning in an unfair way because of luck. In the next fight, things play out much more standard. I do get poisoned early on by the Sandslash, and this chip damage really accumulates throughout the fight because I'm not able to one-hit any of his Pokemon outside of the Cloyster. As a result, when Flareon finally comes out and uses Flamethrower, I go down. To this point, I've saved all but 1 of my rare candies, so I have 10 in total. I think now is the time to use at least some of them. I choose to use 8, taking Misdreavus over 3 damage rounding thresholds, and this saves 2 rare candies for later during the league. Still, even with the increased damage, I'm gonna need to use Hypnosis throughout this fight, and I'm lucky here because I get through the Magneton without being paralyzed. I knock Kadabra out with 2 turns of Swift and move on to the Flareon. Okay, still looks like I'm not doing great damage against it. However, because I'm now 8 levels higher, I'm able to survive its flamethrower with more health. This allows Misdreavus to finally knock it out, and with that, it's made it to the league. With how the mid to late game has been going so far, I sort of expect Misdreavus to just sweep its way all the way to a quick victory. This might be a case where it takes almost as much time to get to Erica as it does to beat the rest of the game. It sort of reminds me of the Abra playthrough where I spent 3 hours defeating Brock and then around 45 minutes defeating the rest of the game. By the way, if you haven't seen that video, link is in the card. Well, without waiting any longer, let's take on the league. Lorelei's first, and she starts with Dugong. The problem with this thing is sometimes it can outrest you and just waste a lot of time, but today I get a critical hit with Thunderbolt and knock it out in 1 turn. Cloyster's next, and of course it has lower special, so I knock it out in 1 hit with Thunderbolt as well. Okay, now it's time for Slowbro. And for this fight I specifically taught Misdreavus Mimic, because after all, this is a great strategy to use against this thing. I can Mimic Amnesia, and then set up to get +6 special. With it, Thunderbolt is going to be an easy KO on all of her remaining Pokemon. I take the Jinx out, and then her ace Lapras comes out, but it's also a 1-hit. So that's it. Lorelei's out of the way. Now it's time for the Hiker. And yeah, what do you expect? I think the music perfectly encapsulates kind of how I feel in this fight, or like his energy, he's kind of just bumbling around, doing nothing. Anyways, like Psychic like sweeps through everything. What's he even gonna do? Like he has like mostly normal moves and fighting moves. I'm a ghost type. He's bad. Anyways, that's it. So now let's reflect on the ghost type in Generation 1. It's really weird, and yes, in this case, Agatha's Gengar does have Lick, which is super effective against Misdreavus. But that doesn't really matter, I can just put it to sleep and knock it out with Psychic. After all, her ghosts are part Poison type, so this is super effective against them. After that, I knock the Golbat out with a single hit from Thunderbolt. Unfortunately, the Haunter takes 2 hits, but after that, I 1-hit the Arbok, and then my Psychic does more than half to Agatha's Ace Gengar. However, I Mimic Substitute, so I survive its hit from Psychic, and then knock it out on the next turn. Okay, so it's time for the second last trainer, it's Lance. He starts with Gyarados, and Thunderbolt obviously gets the 1-hit. Next is Dragonair, and this thing is really annoying because it knows Thunder Wave, which can cut your speed and mess you up for the rest of the fight. I try Hypnosis to get around this, but it misses, and then I get paralyzed anyways. So by the time I've mimicked Ice Beam from the next Dragonair, I'm already at orange health. Aerodactyl gets a hit in, and then so does the Dragonite, which finishes Misdreavus off. Well, this shouldn't be too bad when I finally put the second Dragonair to sleep. It happens on the next fight, and then I accidentally click Mimic, and yeah, so now I'm not gonna get Ice Beam. I guess my best choice here is Thunder Wave. You can actually mimic the same move, so I could have 2 instances of Thunderbolt on my moveset. Yeah, Gen 1, I love it, so great. I use Psychic to knock out the next Dragonair in 2 hits, and then Aerodactyl hits the field. Luckily, Thunderbolt's super effective, so I take it out in 1 hit, and all that's left is Dragonite. Because it's part Flying type, I really should be using Thunderbolt here for the extra damage, but I guess Psychic has the chance to reduce Special, which would be nice, since Dragonite's only physical move is Hyper Beam, which can't hit Misdreavus. So I finish it off, and with that, Lance is no more. I've made it all the way to the champion. I use my final rare candies, heal Misdreavus, and now I'm ready for the final battle. First is Sandslash, and I figured that I could mimic Earthquake here since it's pretty good against the rest of his team. To do that safely, I'm going to need Hypnosis to work. It misses, I get hit with Earthquake, which does so much damage. This Pokemon, I hate this Pokemon. It is so frustrating to fight. Because of that miss, I get a fast reset against the champion. Okay, let's try that again. In the next fight, Hypnosis works, and I'm able to mimic Earthquake. I knock the Sandslash out, and then I move on to the Alakazam. Okay, Earthquake, please get this done. Unfortunately, it doesn't, and the Psychic type survives on orange health. But luckily, Misdreavus is a Ghost type that doesn't have the Poison typing, so I'm not weak to its Psychic moves, so failing to one-hit this thing isn't the worst case scenario. It misses Kinesis, and then I take it out on the next turn. Okay, now it's time for the Executor. This thing is really annoying because it resists all of my moves. Psychic, Earthquake, and Thunderbolt all do half damage to it. I clicked a little bit too fast, and as a result, it woke up and used Leech Seed, which is so annoying because now it's slowly draining my health. Then it even gets a Hypnosis in, which puts Misdreavus to sleep, and as a result, it chips me away. There's going to be no way to recover health because I didn't teach Rest, so that's it. However, if I do add Rest to my moveset, now I can defeat the Executor and move on to the Magneton. Okay, Earthquake, please get this done. However, Magneton has great defense, so it survives and gets to use a Thunderbolt. Alright, that's better than Thunder Wave. At least I arrive at the cloister with my speed intact. Now I am going to need to put it to sleep here because I don't have Thunderbolt anymore. Unfortunately, that doesn't work and it knocks Misdreavus out. These are the perils of using Hypnosis. This move, I swear, like, all of you in the comments are just going to be like, stop using Hypnosis. I know, I really don't want to use this move anymore. When I filmed this playthrough, like, I don't know what happens to me when I'm filming. Like, I get so stressed at this fight, and it's so hard to make it through all 6 Pokemon in a row. Like, it is way harder than Red and Blue, by the way. Like, we just watched my Gengar playthrough yesterday. Yeah, much harder. But in this case, I'm definitely over-relying on Hypnosis, and as a result, the Flareon knocks me out in the next fight. I tried to do the fight without Hypnosis, and yeah, this is a bad idea, especially if you want to mimic Earthquake, because then Sandslash can put in so much damage against you, and the Alakazam finishes me off as a result. Reflecting on this fight, I think I can cut out a lot of the Hypnosis use. Like, I'm going to use it on pretty much every Pokemon right now. Just watch this. It's awful. It hurts to watch this. I think Hypnosis against the Sandslash is a good idea, because if I do have to reset, at least it's a quick reset. Then against Alakazam, I think I can skip it and just 2-hit with Earthquake. After all, Misdreavus is a ghost that doesn't have the Poison type. Then on the Executor, I think it makes sense to use Hypnosis just to prevent Executor's Hypnosis, which can waste so much time if it successfully lands. Following that, I'm pretty sure that just attacking with Earthquake against Magneton is the more reliable strategy. After all, I could crit and knock it out in a single turn. From there, using Psychic on Cloyster and Earthquake on the Flareon is probably the best choice to avoid Hypnosis entirely. Even though I'm using Hypnosis way too much, I do manage to clock in. Misdreavus gets a time of 1 hour, 21 minutes, and 31 seconds, with 15 resets at level 67, in 4 hours and 24 minutes of game time. Honestly, this isn't a very good result, and I think that's largely due to Psywave. That move is terrible. Before I knew it theoretically, but now the feeling is in my body. Like, I just see it and I'm like, no, I don't want to ever use that move again. It's bad enough. I played Misdreavus in Gen 2, now I played Misdreavus in Gen 1. Please, no more Psywave. Coming back to the question that I asked at the very beginning of the video about how ghost types would fare in Generation 1, well, it's very obvious that they're exceptional in the early stages of the game. I also think that Misdreavus in the later stages of the game felt more relaxing to use than a Pokemon like Gengar, and that's because Gengar has the Poison type, so the Psychic type and Ground type Pokemon that it has to face are incredibly scary. However, with Misdreavus, that wasn't the case, and as a result, this playthrough was actually quite relaxing after I got past Surge. Now, I thought about this for a long time, and I'm not going to do a second playthrough with Misdreavus, and that's just because this Pokemon wasn't even supposed to be in the game. Maybe if you all really like this style of content where I import Pokemon from later generations back into Generation 1, I'll create a tier list for it specifically and rank all of their first playthrough attempts. Because this is my Halloween special, I just want to say to everyone, Happy Halloween, thank you so much for watching and supporting my content. It really means the world to me. I appreciate you so much. Have a great day, and I'll see you in my next video.